Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Pot of Gold podcast, where parents turn ambition into action and corporate ceilings into launch pads for entrepreneurship. Today on the show, we have Kelsey Daingerfield. She is the founder of the Pocket COO, where she partners with growth-focused founders to help them scale their businesses without burning out. With a background in corporate operations, marketing, and project management across multiple industries, Kelsey brings a sharp strategic mind and high emotional intelligence to every business she touches. After leaving the corporate world in 2023 to pursue her business full-time, she's become the go-to operator and advisor for founders who are tired of being the bottleneck in their own company. Through strategic systems, strong leadership support, and a no-fluff approach, she helps lean teams grow with clarity, ease, and sustainability. Kelsey's mission is to bring soul and fun back into business. She believes that success shouldn't come at the cost of your sanity, and that every founder deserves a business that supports their life, not consumes it. Now, I'm so glad to have you on the show here today, Kelsey. And just a point of clarification for myself, your last name is Daingerfield, right? I pronounced that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay. You never know.
I get asked about that one a lot.
People spell things differently, and they pronounce them different too.
They do, and that one I usually get like is that really your last name? So
I totally get it. Well, I'd like to start all of my interviews with kind of an exploration into your background and story. How is it that you got to where you're at right now? What were the major decisions or insights that developed your decision to decide to be a COO or I think you call it a fractional COO, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I feel like a lot of women that go through like having children have similar shifts. And mine happened right after I had my son. In 2018, I started being like, this can't be it. Like there's more to what I want to do. And I was going through the motions that my generation was kind of told, like you get your degree, you get married, or you get a job, you get married. And I was like, okay, well, I have my undergrad, I'm getting my master's, I got all my certifications. Like what else is out there? Like this doesn't feel like it's enough. And I read the book Rocket Fuel. And I realized as I was reading it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm an integrator. I didn't even know that was a word. Like I never heard of this before. And I took the quiz because I'm a nerd and do the quizzes and I got like 98%. I was like, oh my God, I feel so seen. And I brought it up to my boss, who was my mentor, my partner in crime. And he was just my number one cheerleader besides my parents and my husband. And he was like, yeah, duh. I'm like, well, you could have told me this. And so he just helped push me through and keep kind of thinking. He did his own little dabble in entrepreneurship. It was when I went on about to go on maternity with my second child, I started doing side jobs and taking on like little projects. Okay. And I liked the flexibility of it. And I had one client before I went on maternity leave. He was like, do you do this like all the time? I was like, oh no, I run admission systems for university. And he was like, you should just start your own company and just boss people like me around because you're really good at it. And I was like, oh, cool. And I came back from maternity leave and my company had a shift and it just didn't feel aligned anymore. And I kind of felt like the creativity, because I was very much a person who they would like, Kelsey, this department's kind of broken and like it just feels siloed. Can you go fix it? So I would just go and fix departments. And that kind of dissipated that initiative and it just didn't feel the same. And so I decided like, okay, let's see where this business can go. And at that point I had my own, at the time I was doing OBM work, online business management. And I had an OBM client. I was helping run his operations for a marketing agency. And then I had other people starting to reach out and it just became too much. So my husband and I came up with a game plan and I was like, what's the minimal amount of number I need to bring home so that we're not in the red? And as soon as I had money saved up and I was able to bring that number, was 3,000. And as soon as I could hit that, I was like, okay, then I have my safety net. Let's go.
Got it. So it was a deliberate kind of a strategy that you put together in order to leave your W-2.
It was. And it was interesting because a lot of the coaches that I was following and they didn't know they were coaching me or the program, I was in one program and the business coach at the time was another female. And she was saying how like sometimes you just have to like rip off the Band-Aid and go do it and like just dive in. Yeah. And I was sitting there, I was like, I pay medical. Like I cover medical. We have 2 kids, daycare, bills, a mortgage. I'm like, I can't just rip that Band-Aid off when I have responsibilities. And I probably could have and figured it out, but I didn't want that stress.
Yeah.
and anxiety from it. So I was like, what's going to make me feel more comfortable? I was like, I need to know what my minimal, like, viable product, what's the minimal amount I need to bring in for us to be safe and okay. And so that's just kind of how I approached it, was what will make me feel comfortable and confident to know that I'm still able to support my family and go after trying to build something and fly by the seat of my pants, because I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Yeah, well, I definitely hear that, because when I was newlywed to my wife, I was working a customer service job, making telephone calls for CenturyLink, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hated that job because every other call, it felt like someone was cursing me out, telling me that I was wasting my life, that I shouldn't be calling them. And I didn't feel like I had any other option, though, because I didn't have any marketable skills. And I just remember one day, a lady had just finished telling me that I needed to go find something better to do with my life, in a very negative energy type way. And I looked around that office and I saw other people that were in their 80s stuck making customer service calls because they didn't have a retirement and they didn't have any other marketable skills. And I realized that if I didn't make some kind of a change, that was going to be me. And that's when I kind of burned the boats, because I didn't have a plan. I just knew I needed to go find some kind of a skill so that I was more valuable to the market. And so I quit that job, not knowing how we were going to make ends meet. And I went back and I learned a trade, became a CNC machinist. And I think since the 7 or 8 years since I did that, I've managed to triple my hourly wage. So it's not the only route that you can take, that you just quit your job and go into freelance work. You can go ahead and upgrade the current job that you have, put yourself in a better position, and then you can do that. So there's multiple avenues to get to the destination. But I'm curious, did you run into any major problems or roadblocks along the way to execute your strategy, or maybe after you transitioned out of your W-2?
I did when I started being like, maybe I could make a shift. And it was the mental roadblocks that we put in our own way of like, who am I to do that? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. And like, was born into the corporate, like, this is the expectation. Like, I remember being in like middle school being like, I'm going to be a COO one day and I'm going to be walking into these like buildings in New York City. We lived on the East Coast at the time. I was like, and I'm going to be in like my blazer with jeans and heels because I'm not going to wear a suit. And I'll be like the one person that doesn't wear a suit, because at the time everybody wore suits. But like, I always had this vision of like, it's going to have to be corporate. It's going to be in the city, and it's going to be like, that's the path.
Yeah.
And I was shaking it up, and I was the only one in my family kind of doing the entrepreneurship a little bit and kind of shifting from a really good safety net. So it was that imposter syndrome really came in, and just trying to make sure like, okay, like it's okay. Like you can fail and do something else. Like you can always come back. So that was one of the ones, especially towards the final end of being like, okay, now my time is, I'm burning the end at both, like the candle at both ends with my energy and time. And then it was my last day, it was March 3rd. And it was a Friday. And on Monday, my daughter was homesick. And then like that whole week, and then my son was like homesick. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I have to be making money. I have to earn an income now. Like I don't just have PTO. Yeah. And that was the other one, is like all of this stuff happened as soon as I was officially off of a payroll at that point. And I got really anxious because it was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not being paid to sit here and watch my kids anymore. Like, and it was just a lot of that anxiety and frustration. And I think it kind of helps that it happened all at the beginning, because it made me be like, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Those were some for sure.
Have you ever been skydiving?
I have not. My mother-in-law has, and I have not.
So when I went skydiving, there's this instant where they open the doors and you're looking down at the ground and you have this, maybe not, kind of a reaction, right? Like, and then they kick you out of the plane because they know you're having second thoughts. And it's the best thing I can compare quitting my job and trying to go after that trade to, because I had no idea what was going to happen, but then everything was okay.
Yeah. And it's like, it's just believing in yourself, being like, no, I got to trust my instinct here. And I feel like sometimes we quiet that natural instinct and that gut being like, no, you're safe. Like you can do it. Just do it. Just try. And
I like something else you said, that even if it doesn't work out, you can go back and you can get a job again. Mm-hmm. So like there is a safety net so to speak, because you still have skills, you have prior work experience, you can go back out and get hired again. You've been hired before. And I think that's a comfort in and of itself.
I do too. And I think it's something that we kind of forget. We feel like it's the end all. Like this is if I fail, then I'll have nothing else to do. And it's like, no, you're a multifaceted person. And there's so many things that you can do. If something doesn't work, you just pivot. We did it our entire lives as kids when we were playing, and we didn't have the pressure. So just approach it like as if you were trying something. And if you fail, you fail, but you tried. And that's one less thing. And that's a skill set that you tried.
Yeah. And you get to learn more about yourself and what you're good at, what you enjoy doing, where your energy goes, all kinds of things about entrepreneurship. And it's really helped me personally. I don't know if I've talked to you at all about my story, but when I was 18, I was assaulted by my college roommate, and he crushed the whole right side of my skull. So I went through a long time of physical recovery, but the more pressing thing was the emotional stuff that kind of came along with that. And I was scared to talk to people for a very long time. But becoming an entrepreneur and forcing myself into these situations where I'm trying to generate leads, network with people, and make sales, do business, solve problems, it's helped me heal. And so I think there's a lot of utility in the entrepreneurship route, because it helps you become more skilled in all kinds of soft skills that you don't think about, even if you aren't working specifically on technical skills like you would as a COO.
Yeah, that's so true. I think because when you're in corporate, you have to have a somewhat of an emotional intelligence, but I feel like there's so many guardrails and like things. But when you're on your own, you're right. You have to flex muscles you may not have had to use before. And you have to learn how to embrace the pivot and being able to just talk to people you don't know and learning how to just do things differently. And I feel like my look at like corporate was like, I went to college and I had like an expectation of like what my job was. I went into the corporate world and I had an expectation of what my job was. But now that I'm running my own show, I'm like, well, the expectation is like kind of open, and the role is like many hats, and it's more broad, which challenges you. And I think it makes us stronger in so many ways and makes us more adaptable.
I definitely agree with that. I've told this to other people before, but I feel like the word adventure really describes the experience.
Ooh, that's a good one. It is an adventure.
Because you are confronted with kinds of like obstacles, dragons, quests, whatever you want to call them, along the way, and you have to figure them out in order to move everything forward.
Yep.
And you said something that I wanted to go back to. You said that you were kind of deviating from the norm that was everything that was being done in your family. Did you receive any kind of pushback from people in your family or loved ones about the route you were taking?
It was more if they weren't sure. They're like, I don't know, like, maybe you just go to a different company. Because at the time I was like, I should be making significantly more than I'm making now. Masters, my PMP for project management. And I had a couple other certs, and I was like, this doesn't even make sense. Like, I'm not even having fun. Like, and it was just like, well, what if you went somewhere else? And it was like, well, I could, but what if I didn't? Yeah. And at first they were a little hesitant. But then my parents ended up my husband was like my number one cheerleader the entire time. I will say that. When I was at my other job, he was like, you're losing your spark. You're losing you. He's like, you need to leave. And I was like, okay, let's like actually think about it. But then with my parents, they were a little concerned because, dad worked 9 to 5 my entire life and traveled and did all this stuff. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom and took care of the 3 of us. So it was another shift from the tradition, the old tradition. Again, it was just kind of pushing the boundaries. But they came around to it. I think I was sitting with my dad and we were at the beach. We were just drinking coffee on the porch talking. And I asked him, I was like, if there was one thing that you could do differently, knowing everything you know, what would it be? And he was like, I wish I never questioned myself when it came to, should I go for that opportunity? And he's like, I always went, I don't know, like that's risky because like I'm in a safe place. And he's like, and I didn't want to, I was too afraid to disrupt anything. Like, what if it didn't work? Like, I have kids, I have a family, I have bills. He's like, I always waited too long. He's like, I wish I just went for it. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, I think I would have had more fun, been home more. And he's like, I actually think I would have gotten farther faster if I just didn't hesitate out of the fear. It's like, it's so interesting. So
Yeah, I need to think about that for a second, because I think that tied into the reason I did it too.
Isn't that interesting?
I get to the end of my life, right? I want to look back on it and say, did I try? Would I be
Was I
okay
happy?
if I didn't try? That's the thing. I'm okay trying and failing, but what if I never made the attempt and just was left with that open question of what if?
Yeah. I have a client right now who's going through it, and we had a call last week, and he was just like, I was driving and I saw this dad and son playing on the front yard, and I was like, I want to be doing that. And I was like, then why not? Why not? Like, you have this business. Let's start creating playbooks so that you can delegate it out to somebody else. And like yesterday, we were going back and forth in one of the messaging apps, and he was just like, I have all this pressure going on. Like, I'm kind of terrified. I feel like I bit off more than I can chew. And I was just like, you didn't. I was like, that's your body pushing because you're challenging the safety and the status quo. I was like, flip the script. I was like, it's not pressure and like anxiety. I'm like, you're nervous and excited because now it's new. I was like, and 2 months from now, it's not going to be new anymore. And I was like, you need to remember that. And like, going back to like the conversation of like our parents, or like us realizing we wanted to make the shift because we don't want to think what if. Him doing this and his kids seeing him make this risk and this adjustment when they're our age, they may not be so scared because they saw their dad do it.
That's a big part of it. Wow.
Right?
I think that you could ruin your children by leaving them a bunch of money.
And not no memories.
Yeah, no memories, no skills with how to manage it. I think the big push for me is to learn the skills of how to do the business, be that person, so that I can teach those things to my children.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I would have liked to know when I was younger, but I don't think that the school system does a very good job about teaching about why money works the way it works.
I was just talking to somebody about this, and like, why didn't they have like, hey, this is how you do your taxes. Yeah. This is how like you should look at a bank account and create a budget and know how these things operate.
Well, I learned how to write a check. They did tell me a little bit about budgeting, but that's pretty much the extent of it. I didn't understand how to utilize debt, how to create value. I couldn't figure out how what a balance sheet was or a profit and loss statement was. All these other things, what it means to reconcile your accounts to make sure your books are actually accurate. All kinds of things that could have been useful. I think are practical life skills that every single person should know. Just like people getting their driver's license.
I know. I said, like, we have to go through all, and I'm going to do a little deviate, but I think my husband and I laughed about it, and you'll probably get a kick out of this too, because we had to take like a test to drive, go all through all these things. To graduate, we had to get all these, like, learn all these things. But then when we had babies, they just said, here you go. And they just told us to leave the hospital. And we're like, I don't know how to change a diaper.
Yeah. But no parent's really ready, is they?
No.
Are they?
No.
That's funny.
It just made me think of that because my husband and I always laugh about it. We're like, man, they just handed us Henry, and we're like, good luck.
Well, the thing that really kind of rubs me wrong is the fact that you can't escape student debt even through bankruptcy. And a lot of the students that take on the student debt don't have an understanding of how the finances work. I do think that you need to take responsibility for your choices, but we could do a better job about educating people about what the consequences are going to be.
Yes, that is 100% true.
Well, I really enjoy that. That's really interesting insights that come from your dad. I find every time I talk to people who are older than me, I learn something from their wisdom. And sometimes it's by accident. Yeah. Interesting.
Right. It just kind of hit home because I was like, wow, that's okay. Like, so yeah, then you got to trust your gut and you got to try.
Yeah. Well, on that topic, or kind of related to it, what do you expect the future of your business to look like? What do you have kind of planned out?
Yeah. I was just talking about this with my coach yesterday, actually, and I see it evolving into, so I've been doing a lot of fractional work, going into people's businesses, getting into the weeds with them, and actually working and putting my hands deeper inside the business. And I see it now, it's really shifting to a higher level strategic support. to where I can take more people on instead of me, because I can only divide my brain up so many times a week and context switch.
I get it. Yep.
And because I'm in tech, I'm in higher ed tech, I'm in agency work, I'm in trades, and then I'm in private catering and chef, and they're so different. And I'm like, this is fantastic, but I want to help more people. And what that's really morphed into is this advisory role where it's not like coaching. It's both coaching, but also helping with implementation. So I work with the founders one-on-one, and we get whatever is stuck in your head, the delegation items that you're struggling to let go of. And then the second call is with the team and actually working with the team to come up with the process and the systems, because they're the front line too. So leveraging the people that you have around you to truly start delegating and finding ways to work smarter together, become more efficient. And if that's taking your idea and putting the project plan together with your team so they know how to execute and who's supposed to do what, then that's what we do, so that you can free up some of that space and start flexing the trust muscle and flexing that delegation better. And then like being that guide for both you and your team. And then the team can come back to me with like, hey, this is feeling weird. And I can answer questions and work with them. So a little bit more of that higher level strategy support, but also sounding board too.
Okay. I think that's really useful. I think a lot of these mentorships and coaching kind of programs, they give you information and coursework, but they don't kind of go into your business and say, hey, this is what's not working. This is what you need to change. This is why you need to develop this skill, etc.
Yeah,
so I like that.
That's actually how it came up, was because like we're both in Dan Martell's group, and like there's all of this wealth of knowledge, and everybody I would talk to and just ask questions, they were like, I don't need another coach. Like I have templates, I have processes that have been recommended and trainings that I can watch. I need people to do. I need to figure out how to actually execute it. And that's where I'm stuck. And they're like, I don't know how to get from that I have it to handing it off. That in between is a gap. And that's like, oh, I like doing that. It's like, that to me is fun because it's like a little puzzle piece. And so that's what we do, is we figure out how to execute stuff, how to implement, or the project that you started and then stopped, and then you kind of looked at it for a week and then you stopped again. Then we come back to it. Yeah. Yeah. And we just say, okay, well, like, what was the stuff that you got stuck on? And is it something that we can delegate out, or is it something that maybe you and I just need to work through it together to get over the hump for you to delegate it out? And it's having that partner that helps you actually work through the things instead of being given another template and say, hey, go implement this. Yeah. And you're like, how? And I like to say, like, my coach and I were talking, she's like, what you do is you take what they have to do, you tell them what to do, you tell them where to focus, and then you help them with the how and the who. She's like, so you're kind of navigating them, pointing them in the thing that they should focus on first, taking note of the other things that we know we got to do, but staying focused and then working them through the process so that it actually gets done. Oh,
incredible.
It's so much fun. I feel like such a dork when I talk about it.
Well, that's cool. That means you're in alignment with your purpose.
Exactly. Because I always nerd out over it. I'm like, at least I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, I like that. That's really neat. Thinking about that, it's something I've been listening to or reading recently. Is talks about systems. And one of the things that I've heard before is this expression that the order isn't do, have, be, it's be, do, have. And the insight that I came to the other day was that the first system, because everything's systems, whether it's biological or diet or business systems, the first system that you need to lock down is the one of identity. So that when you get to a point where you're receiving results that you don't feel like you deserve, because your identity is not in alignment, you're not self-sabotaging because you've already set up the system to match what the identity you're trying to build is. And I was just like, wow, it just makes perfect sense to me. And yeah, felt like it came in like a bolt of lightning. Like, that's the thing I need to fix first. And I think that that's really useful because that's kind of what you're doing with how you're showing them how to perform, to delegate, to pick up the implementation for things, because it's coming from what is the person you need to be able to do that. Very cool. All right. Well, on that topic, Are there any types of resources or maybe educational content you would recommend to people who are struggling with that kind of a problem that you could help them with?
Yes. So I use ChatGPT a lot in my business. I am not a techie person. And I like to let people know I'm not a bot creator. I don't know exactly what a bot is and how all of those things work. But I do know that I am very much can be in my head. And I can be an overthinker. And I know as a parent, you're like going through the checklist of all the things you have to do for your kids and all the responsibilities.
What did I forget?
Oh no, should I put this in the backpack? And so I started leveraging ChatGPT to get out of my brain all of the things and started figuring out how to leverage it and really have it work for me. But I use it to brain dump now. And I've put together different prompts based off of like where my energy is. Like if I'm in marketing, if I'm in operations, or if I have like all these projects and my life taking place. So I put together a couple different prompts for business owners to use that just need to get it out of their head so that you can brain dump into your ChatGPT. It'll ask you some questions. You can just voice note it. So I voice to text my ChatGPT all the time, and I just say everything, and it takes it and it organizes it for me. So if it sounds like it's for my house, it puts all my house stuff together, my client stuff, my marketing and like to-dos, and it just gets it out of your head. So that I have a couple different prompts. It's so unbelievably helpful. I have a Monday and a Friday, and then I do one on Wednesday when I want to clean up my lists. And I just go in there and I just talk to it. And on Monday, I know my game plan for the week. Wednesday, I have my check-in. I know where I'm at. Friday, I do a recap and I queue up for Monday. So you can enter your weekend and be present with your family and not have to think about it. So I have a couple different prompts that if anybody would be interested in them, they can just DM me and then do pot of gold. And then I'll send it to you. And it's just my ChatGPT prompts that help you get out of your own way and out of your head.
Cool.
And it just lets you breathe a little bit better.
I might get those from you myself.
Yeah.
That's on your Instagram? Is that where people go to?
It's just at Kelsey Daingerfield, and it's Kelsey. And then Daingerfield is DAINGERFIELD.
Okay. I'll make sure to include that in the YouTube description below. So if you want to reach out for those ChatGPT prompts from Kelsey, go ahead and click on the link. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell the audience before we finish the interview today?
Just thanks for letting me hang out with you and talk a little bit about my transition story. I just want to help inspire anybody that's even thinking about the shift, because we all have different ways we get to where we want to go. And I think the more stories you hear can help you find one that aligns with you and your situation. So hearing just different stories is always helpful. So thanks for letting me come in and talk and share a little bit about my journey.
Well, it's my pleasure. This is one of my favorite things to do. And, I think that if someone has that calling in their little heart of hearts, that they should listen to that voice. Who knows where it's going to lead you? Exactly. You might have some really crazy problems that you face, but it's going to be your adventure. And if your heart is calling you to that, I say go for it, because you don't want to get to the end of your life and have that question of what if.
Yeah.
Not something you want to go through. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening to our conversation today. This has been the Pot of Gold podcast. We talk about finances, business in general, things like real estate investing. But the whole point of it is to help people who are in the 9-to-5 figure out what's required to leave that, become an entrepreneur, and live life on their own terms. So thank you so much. All have a wonderful day.